I wasn't supposed to be here, but here I am, living proof that sometimes the impossible happens. I'm Mary Burrell, a hospice survivor who found purpose in the fight and a voice in the struggle. This podcast is my way of keeping it real, sharing raw, honest conversation about survival, hope, and what it really takes to rebuild your life when you get that second chance. Whether you're navigating your own health battle, caregiving for someone you love, or just need a reminder that you're not alone, this is a space where we turn struggle into strength and stories into something powerful. Because a second chance isn't just about survival, it's about stepping into your purpose with everything you've got. Podcast is more than just conversations. It's a testament to survival, resilience, and the reality of rebuilding after a second chance. It's about navigating health challenges, the weight of caregiving, and the power of community. Through storytelling, we connect through advocacy. We raise awareness, especially for tricuspid valve health and women's heart valve health. And through community, we create a space where no one feels alone in their journey. You'll hear solo episodes where I lay it all out, alongside powerful interviews with patients, caregivers, and advocates who walk this path. Together, we're breaking the silence, shattering misconceptions, and making sure no one faces the journey alone. This podcast speaks to women 20 to 65 and older, caregivers, hospice survivors, and patient advocates facing heart valve challenges, caregiving, and the journey of resilience. Health conscious individuals and medical professionals drawn to patient stories, advocacy, and groundbreaking therapies like the Evoke. Heart valve health, especially for women, is more critical than ever, yet too many remain unaware of key risks like tricuspid valve disease, despite cardiovascular disease being the leading cause of death for women in the U.S. This podcast meets the urgent need for awareness, advocacy, and real patient stories, filling a gap where women's heart valve health and rare conditions are often overlooked. With over 80% of podcast listeners seeking authentic, relatable content, now is the time to create a space that educates, inspires, and connects women navigating heart valve health challenges and caregiving. The pilot episode, Hope Starts Here, Four Voices, One Mission, kicks us off with the medical breakthroughs, advocacy, and caregiving, showing how innovation, support, and resilience can transform the patient experience. Future episodes will explore the raw realities of hospice, life after the delicate balance of caregiving, while also being a patient navigating clinical trials and embracing medical innovations. Through advocacy and education, this podcast empowers listeners with knowledge and connection. Each 15-minute episode delivers compelling stories, heartfelt interviews, and actionable insights, creating a space for inspiration, resilience, and real conversations. By sharing raw personal stories with a focus on tricuspid valve awareness, a condition rarely highlighted in mainstream media, this podcast creates a space for real conversations about life diagnoses, caregiving, and medical breakthroughs. As both a survivor and a caregiver, I bring a firsthand perspective that's both deeply personal and universally relatable. This podcast goes beyond storytelling. It builds community by offering actionable insights, collaborating with advocacy groups, and amplifying listener voices to create a real connection and inspire hope. I'm looking to partner with sponsors, advocacy groups, and organizations passionate about heart valve health, caregiving, and patient advocacy. Through sponsorships, guest appearances, and co branded campaigns, we can work together to raise awareness and make a real impact. To support the podcast, I will incorporate sponsored content, ads, and listeners' contributions through platforms like Patreon. Down the line, I hope to introduce merchandise that strengthens our community and sustains this mission. More than just a podcast, this is a space for all of us where listeners can share stories, ask questions, and engage with experts. It's about building supportive community that lifts each other up. Hope starts here. Four Voices, One Mission is just the beginning. Follow the podcast on YouTube and share it with someone who needs a little hope and inspiration. Let's build this community together. You can reach me via email, info@maryburrell.com. My website's at www.maryburrell.com. And you can reach me with social media on Instagram and Facebook as Second Chances, as Mrs. Avocado, or on LinkedIn as Mary Burrell. Hope isn't something we wait for, it's something we create. Tune in into the pilot episode and hear how four voices came together with one mission to inspire, connect, and prove that even in the hardest times, hope is always within reach. You've just stepped into a space where real conversations about heart valve health, resilience, and advocacy comes to life. This is Heart to Heart Talk with Mary Burrell, where we speak from the heart for the heart. I'm Mary Burrell, hospice survivor, patient advocate, and heart valve warrior on a mission to amplify voices, share untold stories, and empower you to take control of your heart health. Because when it comes to your heart, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival. So grab a seat, open your heart, and let's dive in. Because every heartbeat has a story, and it's time to tell yours. Today on Heart to Heart Talk with Mary Burrell, I'm joined by Berkeley Barnett, Director of Policy and Advocacy with Heart Valve Voice US. With a background in public health and patient advocacy, she's passionate about amplifying patient voices and driving change in how we can detect and treat heart valve disease. I first connected with Berkeley when she submitted my story to the national coverage determination process, making sure real patient voices were part of the conversation. Since then, I've seen firsthand how committed she is to this work. Hello and welcome to the show, Berkeley.
Thank you so much, Mary, for having me.
I am excited that you've joined us.
And I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. You work with many patients fighting for access to life-saving treatments. Often the biggest challenge isn't just the medical condition itself, but the barriers to getting the right treatment at the right time. What does it take to get a patient's story in front of decision makers like CMS, and what impact can that have on policies and access to essential medical devices and treatments?
So I found, honestly, the most important aspect of getting in front of decision makers is the patient story, and getting decisions out of decision makers is the patient's story. Getting in front of decision makers isn't necessarily the hard part. They give us lots of opportunities. It's through coverage decisions and being able to submit public comment. Patient groups can go up to Capitol Hill and talk to legislators pretty much anytime they want. You just have to schedule ahead. But I found it's not getting the patients in front of the decision makers that's the tough part. It's finding patients who are willing to share their story. I really wish more patients knew the power of their voices and their stories. Story to put in front of decision makers is really what makes the difference. That you can give them all the stats and data that you want about a condition such as heart valve disease, and it doesn't really hit home until they have a person attached to it. If you can say, I live with this disease, my mother lives this disease. I always love to, when I have conversations in person or over email with decision makers like CMS or legislators or staffers up on Capitol Hill, I always say, before I begin, how much do you know about heart valve disease? And do you know anybody who's impacted by it? And you'd be surprised how frequently people are aware of the issue or have a connection to it. It always makes it just so much closer to home and really drives the importance of the issue. I really feel like, again, humanizing the issue or the goal really makes a huge difference. For example, you mentioned we shared your story with CMS in the coverage determination process for T-tier. And we, as Heart Valve Voice US, we also run the Heart Valve Disease Policy Task Force. And so when we send letters to CMS, like we did for that coverage decision, we send one from the Policy Task Force that's very statistical and has a lot of data and outlines the importance of the coverage of the device. And that's great. And that has its impact. But I've always found it's just so much easier to drive the message home when I can incorporate a human story like yours. Like T-tier made such a difference in your life. Like I'm sure that you've talked about that already on the podcast, but you have bounced back from it. Just your story is so incredible. And being able to share the impact that device had on your life is so much more powerful than just sharing the stats and statistics or the statistics and the data and saying, this is how many people are affected, but like really being able to humanize the issue and show the difference it makes in a person's life is super important.
Wow. Thank you for that. I agree. I think you were mentioning that the patient stories catches the attention more so than the stats or data that you could provide the lawmakers.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So even when patient stories reach the right people, there are still significant policy and approval hurdles. Many don't realize just how difficult it is to change the system to prioritize patient needs. What are the biggest challenges in getting patient voices heard as CMS, which is Center for Medicare Services? Is that correct?
Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services.
Thank you for correcting me. And what that needs to change to ensure patients can access treatments and devices they need.
I would say one of the biggest issues with CMS is honestly their personal resourcing. CMS is far behind the times, truthfully. FDA, so in order for a device or a drug to get approved, it has to go through a multi-step process. So it will first go through FDA approvals, which can take a couple of years. But FDA is fairly modernized and can move through approvals fairly quickly. And so really the hurdles come with coverage by Medicare through CMS. And their processes for evaluating these things are pretty outdated and super slow. And so we will wait months and months at a time for these coverage decisions to be made. And so honestly, what needs to change is more resources for CMS and modernization to ensure that once treatments are FDA approved, they can be covered by CMS in a quick time frame.
Interesting. So CMS needs to get their stuff together because
Pretty much, yes.
they're allowing.
But it's always a broader issue than just that, Mary. It's never as simple as that. It requires, more funding from the federal government in order to, pay to modernize these resources, pay to have more employees. It's always, there's a saying, and I can't think of what it is right now, but basically like the government churns, a couple of years behind the rest of the world just because they never have the adequate resources to be ahead of the game.
And yeah, that's so frustrating on so many levels from patients' perspective. I'm sure from your perspective as well, trying to get it through.
Oh, for sure. If we have access, like if treatments exist and have been FDA approved, of course, we want our patients to be able to benefit from them. I mean, there's been such a difference in treatments going from specifically in the heart valve space. We went from, years ago, the only option for heart valve disease patients was open heart surgery. And now we have all these transcatheter devices that are currently being approved. CMS approved TTVR just a couple of weeks ago. So now patients can have access to a device for tricuspid regurgitation that didn't exist before. But we want these to move as soon as they become available. We want patients to be able to access them and not have to pay out of pocket huge amounts for these life-saving devices that are so much less I'm blanking, so much less effective or having, I'm so sorry, so much, we'll move on, so much less disruptive, I guess is a substitution for the word I was looking for. I apologize.
So that's fine. I like it being organic. So thank you for that.
Yes, I guess like a good example of the word I'm looking for is these transcatheter devices, patients get them done in surgery, and a lot of them are back up on their feet like that afternoon, if not the next day. Whereas open heart surgery is way, like requires so much more recovery time and is, much more life-threatening than these transcatheter devices.
I can speak for that. I've had open heart surgery as well and almost died from it. I was in the hospital for 30 days. The transcatheter procedure that saved my life. I was in the hospital for a week only because I was so far on the other side when I was able to get the valve that it took my body a little longer to spring back. But since that point, I've been springboarding off of life and it's been wonderful.
Yes, I'm so glad to hear that. We really hope that everybody gets that experience, that same positive experience.
So, Berkeley, for patients fighting for access to treatment is often about more than just their own care. It's about making a difference for others. Advocacy has the power to change policies and improve access for future patients. From an advocacy standpoint, how do individual patient stories help shape the broader policy change, and what can patients do to push these conversations forward?
Yeah, as I mentioned, putting a patient's story behind some of these advocacy issues we push for really brings just like a human value to them. I think it is so important for patients to share their stories. Everybody has such a unique experience, and being able to share those experiences and outcomes with the community beyond decision makers, with community, with fellow patients, really has the power to move things forward. You and I were talking before we started this podcast of just like the power of advocacy, and you were saying that you are new to this. I just reminded you that no, you're really not. Like, the fact that you were able to get these life-changing treatments is a testament to your own advocacy for yourself. And I think that, like, starting at that base level for patients is like a great, easy first step of like reminding yourself that you do have power to make decisions for yourself. And those decisions can help, one, transform your own life, but push for more down the line. Like, if you're in a doctor's office and you've heard about, this new tech device from, maybe Heart Valve Voice US has been talking about this new TTVR device, and you're like, maybe that could be great for me. And your doctor goes, okay, well, you have tricuspid regurgitation, you need open heart surgery. Even just like the click of there of being like, well, I heard about this thing called Evoke, and I'm interested in learning more about that. The doctor may have, one, not even thought about that as an option, or two, might be new to transcatheter devices, and it could be a learning opportunity for them too. But it might not be an option for all patients, but at the same time, if you're educating yourself and then educating other patients at like a base level, advocacy doesn't have to be this big thing where you go to Capitol Hill and share your story with legislators and ask for, this bill to be passed. Like, it starts at such a simple level of advocating for yourself and sharing your experiences with others. I can speak from personal experience. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 21 years ago. And so I myself am a patient advocate, and I am surrounded by I've joined a community surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of other type 1 diabetics. And even just being able to talk about how much I love the device that I'm on and hearing others talk about theirs, it's educating me, somebody who's lived with the disease for 21 years. And I think that being able to like spread your knowledge is advocacy in itself. So I think not being afraid to like start at a base level of, asking questions in the doctor's office, talking to community members about this, joining, Heart Valve Voice US's My Valve, My Voice, and hearing from other patients and sharing your story there makes such a big difference to so many people. I think there's an aspect of like knowing that you're not alone too that is really powerful, and like being part of a community that has the same goals as you and being able to work together to push those forward, I think is so big. I think, again, like encouraging people to join the community that may live with heart valve disease or may know somebody with heart valve disease, and being able to carry those people along with you. Like, the more voices, like one voice can be very powerful, but many voices can be even more powerful. And so I think just, continuing to get people involved and encouraging others to share their stories and not being afraid to share your story. Like what you're doing here, Mary, like your podcast is such a great example of powerful advocacy and educating others on heart valve disease and what it means to live with it and what people are doing with it, and what's new in the heart valve disease treatment space. And all of those things are just examples of advocacy, and the more we talk about it, the more people are educated on it, and the more if it rings a bell for people and they're more aware of it, they might be more willing to do something about it too, if that makes sense.
Really makes sense. And so if you want change, you have to speak up. You have to use your voice. And the other part that I got from what you shared was anyone can be an advocate. It comes on many levels. It could be just a simple letter that you write for change, or you could have your voice amplified. If any of my listeners are interested in checking that out and how you can do that, Heart Valve Voice US is where I started, and I recommend everybody go check out the website to see how you can fit in because there is a place for you there. Berkeley, thank you so much for your work that you do and for being such a powerful voice for us patients. I'm personally grateful for how you've helped share my story and the stories of so many others who deserve to be heard.
I'm so glad to be part of this and to get to share your story. It makes doing the work I do so fruitful and impactful for me as well.
Well, that's a wrap for today's episode of Heart to Heart Talk with Mary Burrell, where we speak from the heart for the heart. If today's conversation sparked something in you, a question, a revelation, or maybe even the courage to take the next step in your own heart health journey, don't keep it to yourself. Talk about it. Share your story. Start the conversation. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a review to help more people find these conversations and pass this episode along to someone who may need it. And if you're all ready to dive in deeper, join the conversation. Connect with me on social media or visit www.maryburrell.com for more resources, support, and ways to take action. Because when we speak up, we spark change, and the world needs to hear our voices. And remember, your heartbeat is more than just a rhythm, it's a message. What is yours saying?